So bring it back and start again. Back and start again. So bring it back and start.
Welcome to this episode of Jibber Jabber, the vocal part of the Networking magazine. With me, your host, Sanj Segal. In today's episode, we catch up with James Sang Lee, who has an impressive list of credits, including successful movies such as Lethal Weapon 4, Marvel's Blade, and the Lionsgate action thriller Plane featuring Gerard Butler. His work on popular television shows like MTV Made, Burn Notice, Mortal Kombat, and the upcoming Test Drive Live further solidifies his standing in the industry. I caught up with James for a candid conversation about his professional journey. How did you get involved in fight choreography? I mean, it's not a natural progression for every martial artist. So what sort of steered you in that direction?
Well, Sanj, thanks for having me on your show. Super excited to talk with you. I got into fight choreography because I was very fascinated, like many martial artists, with Bruce Lee. And I was a competitor on the pro circuit. And a friend of mine, Ho Sung Pak, who plays Michelangelo in the original Ninja Turtles, he said, "Hey, James, I know you want to be in the movies, but you can win 10 more championships, but you got to move from Madison, Wisconsin to like Los Angeles or some larger city." And so I did, packed up everything with a buddy and moved to Florida, of all places.
Oh my God. Okay, big move. It was a gamble, right? A bit of a risk for you.
Well, it was a big gamble because a couple things. Number one is at that time, it was really Los Angeles and maybe a little bit New York, a little bit Chicago, and Florida was sort of the up-and-coming film community at that time. But I didn't really know that. My buddy and I drove to Florida in the middle of the night, got to Orlando, saw the Universal Studios sign. We were so excited and didn't realize they really don't make movies there. It was a theme park. So that's how it all started.
Okay, right. And I guess it was a natural progression for you. But did you get any inspiration? What was the incentive? Was it monetary gain or personal gain? There must be a younger audience here looking at you going, wow, how'd you get into that? You're a young guy and, how'd you get into this?
Absolutely. I was, like I said, I was on the pro circuit. And at that time, a lot of martial art experts, a lot of champions in this time were being picked to be in various movies from Ninja Turtles, Karate Kid, Van Damme movies, Steven Seagal, and so on. And I was like, I could do that. And I really wanted to be in it. I loved the fame. I loved the excitement. And of course, the money was really good as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose that's the prime incentive after all. Okay, all right. So let's talk about your background in martial arts. Obviously, you're very talented. I've had a little look at of what I can find of you. And amazing. How did you, Bruce Lee was your main, the inspiration behind your drive to find, to pave your way forward into martial arts. But, I'm trying to work out what the inspiration was to get you actually involved in the first place. When did you start? Were you a child? Were you a child prodigy? How did you get into it?
Absolutely. Well, my family's originally from Hong Kong, China, and we have a kung fu master in our family, in particular in the style of Wing Chun, which was the original style of Bruce Lee.
That's right.
And so growing up in the Midwest of America, I was kind of like, what does a Chinese kid do with all these blonde hair, blue-eyed people? I better learn how to protect myself with self-defense. And I was just wanting to connect with my culture. And so kung fu was the early start. And as you know, a lot of Hong Kong films have action with Jackie Chan and Donnie Yen. And so I was naturally connected to my culture, to my community with kung fu. So it started with kung fu, but then I went on to learn kung fu, karate, taekwondo, jiu-jitsu, and kobujitsu weapons.
Wow. Okay. And, I'm fascinated with that. Was it your family member that you spoke about that sort of trained you or put you under his wing? Or was it your own sort of drive that, how did you learn all of these styles? Where did you learn all of these styles?
Oh, great question. So the first and foremost thing was, I was naturally driven young man. I was like, I want to be somebody. I want to be strong. I want to be tough. I want to be fast.
Yeah.
And I was naturally like really inclined to something like martial arts. The second thing was, as I mentioned, a kung fu master in our family. And the third major piece was influenced by a man named Sankey Peg. Many people don't know behind the scenes, but in the Taekwondo community, Sankey Peg was one of the 5 that brought Taekwondo to the Olympic Games. And my father and Sankey Peg went to college together at the University of Wisconsin in zoology. And so I naturally was encouraged by Sankey Peg to pursue martial arts and later even movies.
You have something in common with my daughter. She's also just graduated in zoology, and she studied martial arts taekwondo since the age of 6.
Really?
My son is a black belt in taekwondo as well, so we do have something in common.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
But okay, right. So familiar with taekwondo, because obviously watching my own children go through that, they've made a lot of sacrifices in the world of martial arts, the discipline behind it. Is it all glamour? Did you suffer any injuries? Did you have to have a special diet? Are you very conscious of the way that you look, or your fitness levels? If I wind the clock forward, what is it like?
Well, I'll give you an example. So the World Championship year, so I was in the World Final 7 times on ESPN, won 4 in a row, the only one who's ever won 4 in a row in self-defense. And those preparation days were 7 meals a day, practice 3 times a day, and including outside of practice, an additional 200 gun disarms a day. So that's a significant amount of practice that goes into your day. That's a lot of strength training, cardio, martial art moves. And so I was really blessed with genetics, but I had a lot of drive. And I feel like God also blessed me because I came across Pat Johnson in his career. And many people know Pat Johnson from Ninja Turtles, Karate Kid, and of course, a lot of action films. So I was just very blessed that way.
Right. I saw your a clip on Instagram, and I'm going to put a link for those who want to follow you on the podcast production box and also on the profile, and you'll also be on the radio so they can follow you. But on Instagram, it was quite a nice clip you had there talking about gun training there. It was a clip of you had a whole line of students there and you were doing some gun training with them. At least it wasn't weapons training. It was how to hold a gun, how to walk with the gun, how to walk backwards with the gun, how to look good with a gun. Is it relevant? I mean, is that very much part of Hollywood? It's not just being able to hold a gun. It's about looking good with a weapon.
Absolutely. Well, you do need to look good. And one of the things is the authenticity and the believability when it comes to firearms and action films is a very critical part. I was very fortunate to train with Master Kim Kahana Sr., who was stunt double for the United States' action film star, 1970s, Charles Bronson. Wow. And so Kahana was a weapons, firearms person. So I learned an extensive use of pistol, rifle, shotgun, machine gun, sniper rifle, explosives. And so that became part of my focus and expertise in the action industry. Now, why do I tell you that? Well, the audience is also much more educated now. They're like, well, wait a minute, that FBI agent wouldn't carry that kind of gun, or that SWAT team, they carry this kind of gun. And so part of the believability is the ability to use a piece of equipment like that, not only efficiently, but also effectively in the sense wow, you really were, quote unquote, a Green Beret, or you were a police officer. And so the training that I did in that last seminar at Disney, Coronado Springs, was based upon, hey, how do you look good carrying this, and how do you use a firearm in film?
So you make people look believable. It's kind of I also am fascinated. I have to ask you this question because obviously we're interviewing actors and actresses and filmmakers, directors from the movie industry, from all different genres, including the indie movie industry. The birth of the green screen and special effects and technology introduction, does that hinder you as someone who's trying to make people look good on screen, or is it a benefit? Is it a tool for you to use?
Yeah, that's a great question. The film industry has had sort of ups and downs when it comes to technology. Some of the technology is great.
Yeah.
Some of it has been challenging, like where is the industry heading? On this last major film that I did for Lionsgate was with Gerard Butler, the movie Plane.
Yeah.
And so I play the Green Beret sniper Willis in that film.
Yeah.
One of the beauties of this film is that they had a budget of around $50 million. And so Jean-Francois Richet, the director, and Gerard Butler, they wanted to kind of come back to a very more traditional action film, meaning let's get people who really were action guys. We had 2 Navy SEALs, an Army recon guy, and they're like, let's get James Lee in here. He knows how to use weapons and fight. Yeah. And so there was a certain believability and even authenticity because there was very little tech. And so I think one of the things that audiences are starting to also see is like, it doesn't look digitized. That's a real person. That's their real story. Yeah. And so there's good things. The other part of it, back to the AI and the technology, Screen Actors Guild went on strike last year. And part of it was all the AI technology. That's like, do we need anybody to write anymore? Do we need anybody to film anymore?
Yeah, it was a big threat, right? It was a big threat.
Big threat. And so I think there's this unique intersection between the tech and what's real. And I think it's a new navigation of what's to come. I think it's to be seen, but it could be very challenging coming up.
Yeah. Okay, right. Lightsabers. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that follow Star Wars. And I've got to ask you this, because when I saw your list of things that you do, and you do so much, lightsabers, talk to me about it. I mean, that's not sort of, you don't meet people every day. Yeah, I can train people to use a lightsaber. How did you get involved with that? How did you even think about that?
Yeah, well, my original style was Kung Fu, and when you study Kung Fu, right out of the gate, you're taught weapons, swords, knives, and all this stuff. I also studied a lot of Filipino martial arts, so you have a lot of stick fighting and knife fighting. And so lightsabers is really just an extension of the Chinese Kung Fu and even Filipino martial arts in terms of general physical movement. Now, here's the beauty of this, though, is Ryan Watson from Mandalorian and I teamed up for this seminar. And so we had an absolute blast, no pun intended, with all these cool lightsabers. And it was really cool. But here's the real roots behind lightsabers. And it's going to throw you off for a second. So my son has autism. And so that community, I was working on a martial arts for kids with autism. And one of the things that we found is that students, not just, youthful people like, hey, let's have some fun like we like Star Wars, but we found that kids with autism were gravitating towards the lightsaber. And because of it, they were getting, if you will, lightsaber therapy, getting some exercise in and getting some therapy, if you will. So it was a combination of my movie background and some of my efforts to help the special needs community.
I saw the name of this, the name of the editorial that I wanted to give you was Quantum 5. It took me a little bit of time to get that. I just thought you have 5 different elements and the quantum was the physics, and I wanted to bring it all together. Can you explain your 5 skill bases, if you like? Just bullet point them, and what are they? And why would people be interested in those, or at least the movie industry?
Absolutely. Well, the first one is film is amazing, but my root background was martial arts. And so much of it generates from martial arts and that human body physical movement, right? Your strength, your speed, your cardio. And that, if you do it well, right? You hear this term, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Yeah. When you do something over and over and over, repetitively, you have a strong foundation. There's actually great freedom in that foundation. Yeah. And so when you do that, that human expression, right? Human body movement becomes not just hard, structured, rigid. It actually becomes creative. And so when you then push to the filmmaking industry, you're not bound by hard structure. You still have good foundation, right? From martial arts, but you're able to come outside of your sandbox and express yourself truly. So that's where that freedom with the physics, the freedom of the human body movement, those things become even musical, if you will.
Right. Interesting. Okay. All right. You do firearms, and firearms is in the news because, we unfortunately, somebody died on set with a firearm. It's well documented across, the news, the media. One of the things I noticed is that when you do the firearms training, you start with the dummy guns, don't you? I saw the clip of you with those yellow sort of plastic guns, and then I'm assuming that they're swapped for the real, not the real thing, but is that how it works? Is because health and safety is so important. What do you do as a trainer? What do you use? What kind of equipment do you use, or what is your strategy?
Well, right off the gate we have this saying: always point a gun in a safe direction. Always keep your finger off the trigger, and always keep guns unloaded unless you're actually going to shoot. When I mean shoot, I don't mean shoot film. I mean shoot a gun.
Yeah.
And so that's like the key aspect right out of the gate from a safety standpoint. Now, back to the yellow guns. So we will use very distinct plastic or rubber guns that it's so obvious that they're not real. Yeah. No one's going to get hurt. No. Right. And so you probably saw me with young people even.
Yes, right? I did.
Holding almost, if you will, almost like a prop, right? Yeah. It looks like a gun, maybe even feels and holds like a gun, but it's impossible to shoot. Yeah. And so we start there from a safety standpoint so that there's no stress, right? Yeah. We actually still treat it like a gun, and we begin to go over the fundamentals of safety so no one gets hurt.
Yeah. Excellent. Right, let's talk Blade. One of the most legendary movies. It's iconic. Rumor has it's coming back. I don't know if that's true. Tell me about Blade. You were working on that movie. Tell me about that experience. That's a pretty amazing thing to have on your resume.
Well, it is a complete honor to have been in the movie Blade. Wesley Snipes was an amazing actor and martial artist. Yes. A lot of people don't realize it's like, well, what did Wesley really do his moves? And the answer is yes. Yeah. He's a very avid martial artist himself. Wow. I think when I got brought in by Jeff Ward was Wesley Snipes' stunt double for years. Yeah. And with Wesley's stunt double, Jeff Ward, Jeff was beginning to transition from stunt coordination and even moving to directing. And when he was going to this, he also had a guy named Chuck Jeffries from the Hong Kong Circle. Right. And Chuck, they just brought in so many great martial artists from Taekwondo, from Kung Fu, from karate, from weapons. And we could all tell when we were together, we were going to do something really great. And I think it was a combination where the studio was big on this whole idea of making a comic book film, right? Because Blade is essentially Marvel #1, essentially, right? This is the beginning of everything.
And it's front to back action, isn't there? There's no break in it at all. It's like,
it's wonderful storyline, right? It's good action. Yeah, and then again, you have these great martial artists on the film. So we were really honored to make something great. And I could tell when we were on set, I think we even knew like this is going to be a great movie. Yeah. So and it was.
Lethal Weapon 4 is also on your resume. You were the fight choreographer for that movie, and that was an iconic movie. I loved it. How involved were you with the choreography? Because obviously there were martial artists in play.
So in Lethal Weapon 4, actually, I wasn't the choreographer. I was brought in as a stuntman. And so I got to work with a great choreographer, Jeff Amata. Wow. And then the stunt coordinator, Mick Rogers, and also Conrad Palmisano. So you're talking like big studio league, with Stunts Unlimited, Stunts Association. And in Lethal, I did a very dangerous stunt where we had a freighter in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and I was supposed to take a dinghy off the ship down and jump into the Pacific Ocean below 50-degree water with Mel Gibson's speedboat coming in. And I got to tell you this, it was awesome because that back then, Richard Donner, Goonies, Superman, he was still alive back then. And we're in the dinghy boat in the middle of the ocean, and Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, Joe Pesci, and Donner says to me, he's like, James, he's like, if you don't jump far enough, it's going to pull you under the water for a mile. I'm like, yes, sir. He goes, if you jump too far, Mel Gibson's boat's going to hit you. I'm like, yes, sir. I know. And he's like, you got your wetsuit on and glow sticks just in case, like if you get lost in the ocean, the Navy SEAL guys will get you. I said, yeah.
God.
And then the last question, Sanj, Richard Donner says to me is, James, can you swim? And I was like, yes, sir, I can swim. But you would think that would be the first question, right?
Yeah, that would be the first.
Yeah.
Okay, you're involved with filmmaking. I saw that on your resume. How are you involved with filmmaking? I mean, you've got this vast amount of skills, and have you just sort of fused them all together and thought, you know what, I can do this?
Yeah, the natural progression, especially from the action side, is usually stunts, and then usually to the fight choreographer, the stunt coordinator, and then to the second unit film director. I've played those roles, especially with the Kahana stunt team with the longtime 94-year-old Kim Kahana Sr. And so I've obviously been a stuntman, been the weapons guy, been the fight choreographer, been the stunt coordinator, and obviously I'm into the filmmaking side as well. Yeah. And so those are kind of the natural progression as you go through the action side of the movie business.
But what kind of challenges do you face? I mean, you obviously you're sort of not dipping your toe, but obviously it's a completely different industry, isn't it? When you're on the other side of the lens and you're making a film, is it frustrating? What are the sort of challenges that you face so far? Just to give the audience a view of what it's like to be on the other side of the camera.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you one of the challenges, actually, especially when it relates to firearms. Right. Firearms in a different era might have been a little bit more trained. What I mean by that is, let's back up the calendar. World War I, people had use of firearms. World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and so on, and even Desert Storm. But the next sort of generation do not have the fundamental training from a military background or maybe a law enforcement background. And so there is sort of this lack of education in that area. And so trying to make an action film with people who do not have that, I'll use the word tactical-like experience, can be very challenging, because it's like, you're going to run away or hide behind a car, or you would shoot the bad guys. And so some of that has to be extremely choreographed and rehearsed, that I don't think, if you will, when I was a kid, we'd kind of play cops and robbers. Sure. I don't know if it's appropriate to play cops and robbers anymore. Anyway, my point of it is that I don't think that natural imagination it comes into play. So that is a little bit challenging now.
You talk about etiquette. I mean, I read somewhere that, there's the etiquette of filmmaking. Can you explain that in a way? Is that the kind of meaning? Is there a certain format you refer to? What do you mean by etiquette?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to even sort of like what I was saying, is there's an etiquette. And I think sort of this social media Instagram age is that everybody just wants to be famous and rich. Yeah. Well, there was still hard work in that. And so sometimes when you go straight to the top, you miss all of these very valuable pieces that would have been training. And I don't mean just in the classroom. I mean on the set. And so the person that was, the production assistant running around getting people coffee, they're learning the protocol, the etiquette of what is expected on set, whether it's safety or when to talk or when to speak or when to put in, your 2 cents, or when to honestly be quiet. Yeah. So I think there's a certain etiquette culture that a lot of people are lacking before they're getting to the movie business.
Well, you touched on Instagram there, and you are very active on Instagram. How much of your audience, I mean, I can see the comments flying in and the numbers there. Is it important to you, or is it just going through the motions? Is Instagram sort of connecting with your following? Is it something you just have to go through the motions with because everybody else is doing it? Or is it something that, what is it? What is Instagram to you? Is it a tool?
It is definitely a tool. I think it is a great way to connect, and I'll be very honest with you, Sanjay. I'm learning how to use it. Right. My kids and
that makes students, 2 of us, James.
Yeah, my kids and my students are actually the ones that encourage me to do it. I honestly probably wouldn't even have one if it wasn't for them. But it's been because of my kids and my students. Yeah, it's been a great way to connect with people. And whether it's as simple as, hey, James, what do you think about this fight scene? Or, hey, where can I get some training for this? And so it does have this great collaboration access to the community and the community to me that might not be able to see me on a regular basis. So I found that it's been a great tool that way. I will say this, though. I am pretty new to using it still. And so everybody...
You're doing a good job, though, James.
Be flexible with me.
Well, listen, it was a joy to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
And I'd love to have you back, actually, at some point. You know, maybe a catch-up would be great. You're a fascinating character, and you know, you don't meet people of your genre in movies, particularly in the choreography and the gun training, and you know, you kind of package this whole thing together, which is why I called it Quantum 5. I keep going back there to that. I dreamt about that, and I got up in the middle of the night and said that's going to be the title.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I'd love to have you back on the show at some point. For the audience listening in, I will give you all the information about James. I'll even put his Instagram ID on the podcast description box. Thank you, James, for joining me, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks a lot. Great to have me on your show. I really appreciate you. Keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.